think this would be a nice place to come for a bit of a snorkel, actually, when I'm not supposed to be at work, which I'm supposed to be doing right now. So it's tank fill time again. I've drained out all that soupy green water, and I rescaped the log jams. You can see I've actually also installed a couple of finer, smaller pieces of driftwood, and I was pre-soaking those in one of my other ponds. A few strategic places I actually have put some of the river pebbles just in amongst the driftwood to attempt to help to weigh it down. And you can see on the larger piece up there, I've put a couple of stones up there. I may remove those later on, but that'll help just keep the log down. The main log I'm worried about is actually that paler one in the middle, the largest one. It's still a little bit buoyant. The one that on the top that actually curls up and over it, it actually is already waterlogged. So I may just maybe get a bit of rope or a concrete block or something and just tie that up and over and down over the trunk of that grey log, and that'll just help to hold it down. Here's a look down from above after I've finished installing or reinstalling the driftwood, the log jams and the smooth river stones in the base of the tank. I've installed the coarse river sand behind the log jam back there, and also in the rear left hand corner, and that's where I'll grow the eelgrass or the vallisneria. Along the front of the tank, it's mostly just these smooth river cobbles, so it's a fairly chunky, coarse kind of a look, but the creeks around the back of Coffs Harbour do have these coarse river pebbles. The water moves along, it's not rapids, but it moves along at a reasonable pace. It's really only these river pebbles that actually get a chance to get left behind in the current. This area down here, this will be a much more open area. I'm not 100% sure if in that area back there I'll plant maybe some water lilies, or I may do some in pots, or I don't know yet. At this stage I'm just planning on having the vallisneria or the eelgrass in the back corner and along through that log jam area. I may put a water lily in, I don't know, let me know what you think. And in this front right hand corner, I may use some smaller stones, or I may also install a leaf litter bed there. I like the idea of fish exploring through the decomposing leaves and the bit of a natural style aquarium. And I've been listening to Scott Fellman on the Tint podcast, and that's a really great podcast for those who like blackwater aquariums and just natural aquariums and more of a philosophical take on the freshwater hobby. So this is Hartley's Bridge, crossing over the Arara River, just outside of Karamba. And Karamba is a town on the other side of the hill from Coffs Harbour. The actual water level here is up a fair bit from what it normally is. This area in front of me is actually usually dry pebbles, and as it comes down here and under this bridge, there usually is a bit of a water hole under here, which is separated and isolated from the rest of the main river, which is over this side near the cow. In actual fact, that little water hole that's normally here is a good spot to catch rainbow fish, because they get accumulated and caught in the water hole and can't get back to the main channel. So I've come out here today to try and collect some eelgrass and some vallisneria, and get my turtle tank planted up before I fill it to the top. And look, there's a great example of an eroded riverbank with the smooth river pebbles showing. This has got a lot more river pebbles showing than what I actually tried to depict on my aquarium. But it can give you the inspiration of where I was coming at when I was doing my backdrop. And just up ahead there, there's some tangled roots I might go and check out and see if we can find some for the exposed part of my tank. These are the roots that are being exposed by the water as it's washed the sediments away. And these roots, I'm gonna see if I can actually find a few loose ones here, a few that have died off. They've actually come down from the trees up above, not those privet bushes, but up above the privet bushes are the river casuarinas, Casuarina cunninghamiana, and that's the roots that we're seeing down here. This mat of plants in front of me here, that's actually not Vallisneria. That appears to be a mixture of, I don't know if it's a hydrocotyl and an Iliacaris, like a hair grass. The actual Vallisneria itself is, well, there's a piece there, that reddish colour plant there. But I can see, it might be harder for you to see on the camera, but the areas, there's another mass of it just there. It's a broader leaf, it's not as lime green, it has a reddish tinge to it from the sun. Got a nice deep pool here, nice val beds. I think there'd be some interesting, probably catfish and eels, a few turtles to be checking out underwater. So maybe on another day, maybe on a weekend, we might come back here, have a bit of picnic, bring my wife, bring the kids, and go underwater. I think if you look closely here, you can understand where I got my inspiration from. There's logs washed up on the banks and jammed up in the current. Underneath the bridge over there's plenty of logs that have been washed up there by the floods. And if you look at the underside of the or the sediment here, it's just pure river stones. My foot for comparison. There is a coarse river sand base to it, but a very deep layer of quite large river stones. And there's a fair bit of current here. All the Vallisneria beds are all sort of laying down flat in the current. That's something I need to consider when I'm actually setting up the water flow in my turtle tank, I think. So here's a collection of tangled root pieces I brought back from the Arara River and Hartley's Bridge today. This is the stuff that was from the Casuarina cunninghamiana tree. That's pretty amazing. So I'm going to go through this and actually utilize it to give the effect of the roots hanging down into the water column from the trees that are above on the bank. Look at this piece here. It's even got its stones still inside the actual the root. This guy here clinging onto the stone still. That looks fantastic. Well, the tank's not even up and running yet, really. I I drained it, got rid of the green water, refilled it, and scaped it, planted it. I've been letting it run for about a week now, and we've got life in here already. So these are some tadpoles which are hatching out from, I imagine, our green tree frog here in Australia. There's an adult one just in the downpipe from the shed next door, so I imagine that he or she's come in here and laid eggs and found a buddy in the night time. We'll try and just scan along these root systems and you can have a good look at the tadpoles. There's some mozzie, wrigglers, lots. And again, I apologise about the wobbly foam, but we've got so many tadpoles in here and I'm zoomed in quite close. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed at the moment. The turtle tank over here, I've been trying to get the filtration hooked up, and it's been one of those days. It's been crap. So my original plan to run the oversized irrigation filter, disc filter, just didn't work. It was just too cumbersome, too awkward. Alright, so I drilled those two 32mm bulkheads there. One was to actually have an output. I was going to put the pump inside the pond here, send the water out through the filtration, through the UV, and come back through this spray bar. That's what I did there. Looks fairly pretty. I had to cut through the FC sheeting with a larger hole to allow the bulkhead thread to come through, so that little toilet flange, or it's a 50mm DWV PVC pipe flange, looks quite nice and pretty there. I'll have to bog that up, and I was going to mount the filter just there, but it was just too big, so I've decided for simplicity I'm going to put a sump in. Righto, but for now I think I'm officially done because I've had enough. It's about 7:20, my cockatoo's screaming in the background. I come back from basketball, I'm sweaty, I got sawdust on me, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling anxious. I have a habit of overwhelming myself and just doing too much, trying to get too much done too soon, and it's not a good thing. So I'm just going to call it a day, have a shower, get my cockatoo out, and have a nice little Scotch whiskey. Righto, so it's the morning after my little semi-meltdown, and I'm feeling a little bit better, a little bit more clear-headed. I have a habit of trying to overachieve sometimes, I think, and I push to get things done immediately, and I get stressed about that. I stress myself, and sometimes it's just best to leave it alone and come back the next day. So here we are. I had a bit of inquiry about the filtration system that I'm going to run on the 12-foot turtle and rainbow fish tank, and I've changed my mind a little bit on what I'm going to do, actually 2 times. Originally, I was just going to run no filtration whatsoever, and I was going to run a daily water change system whereby I automatically flush the tank with new clean bore water from my well, and it overflows out the back into the stormwater system, and I'll still do that. But then I had that green water episode. The tank doesn't look quite so pretty now, and with that it became obvious that with that much light and potentially some nutrients from the turtles and the fish, I'll need to install a ultraviolet sterilizer to make sure that green water doesn't actually proliferate. So I got myself, one sec, so I picked up this bad boy from a lovely man in Coffs Harbour who took it off his koi pond. This is just a Pond 1 Cleartech 36 watt ultraviolet clarifier or sterilizer. It's nowhere near the capacity of the Pentair 120 watt unit I've got on my reef tank, but this doesn't need to do with such heavy lifting. It doesn't need to go for a real strong dose of UV against a slow flow. I can have a faster flow. So filtration, I've got my ultraviolet sterilizer. That'll keep the green water under control. But what I really also want to control was any particles. I want to control any bits and pieces floating through the water, try and keep it as clean looking as possible. I don't care about biological filtration. This 4,000 litre tank has got wood and driftwood and plants and stones and sand and leaf litter and surface area. There's going to be plenty of biological filtration in there for 2 turtles and some rainbow fish. Plus I'm going to have daily water changes going through. So in terms of keeping ammonia at bay, not a problem. But particle wise and mechanical filtration, my first thought was, well, I've got this basically it's a disc filter sitting around at the farm not being used. And I thought to myself, this is perfect. This came off a irrigation system I was using on the farm. Basically the concept is, I can get this out, the water passes in alongside these discs, is forced through the discs, which have little grooves in them. The sediment is caught by those discs, and the water then exits back up through the middle of the column of the discs and out of the unit. So I started to mount this. You can see I put a board I bolted to, and I was going to bolt that to the side of the tank, and I did that. And then when I was testing to see how to remove the actual bottom of it, I just realized it's heavy, it's cumbersome, it's hard. You can see it's not going together properly just yet. You got to juggle around with this clamp, and I thought that's just not going to happen. I'm not going to knock that thing apart and clean that as often as it should. So I won't. So I'm not going to put it on. I've got to make life simple. So I canned that idea. Then I thought, well, I got this canister. This canister's been lying around inside the shed for a while. It's basically a PVC pipe with an acrylic bottom and acrylic top. It's got an acrylic lid with some thumb screws that go around. The water itself goes down through the middle, through that pipe, through to the bottom of the canister. It reverse flows through the media, comes back out some plumbing from the lid. To get access to it, you got to unbolt the thumb screws, turn the lid a little bit, take the lid off, and then access the media. I could run it in a reverse where it goes in the side, through the media, so I can get some sponge, for example, cut it the shape of the disc, cut a hole in the middle to slot down over that pipe, slot it all the way down. The water would have to come through all that sponge to the bottom, into that pipe at the bottom, and come back out the top. But again, I have to unbolt, I don't know, about 10 or so thumb screws every time I want to get access to it, and that's a pain as well. Doesn't sound like much, but I know when you've got a lot going on, you've got family, you've got life, you've got aquariums, you've got other animals, you've got a farm and a business and money to earn. Doing that as often as it should be done, which potentially, for my reef tanks, I do it every 2 days, 2 to 3 days. That has changed my mechanical filtration. So I can't see myself unbolting this every 2 to 3 days. So I canned that idea as well. So what am I going to do? I've got daily water changes which will happen from my well water and the overflow. I've got my 36 watt ultraviolet sterilizer to keep the water clear, but I want mechanical filtration. So I've gone back to what I use for my saltwater systems, and that is a sump. And a sump for me is basically another box or a reservoir of water. It could be a tank, it could be a tub, it could be a trough that sits either above or below the line of the tank. If it's below, the water drains down to it. As it enters the sump, it can go through mechanical filtration media or a filter sock. It can then go through biological media if you have it. The water then can be heated if you need to, so you can hide all your gear down in there, your heaters, etc., your plumbing. There's a return pump that sucks the water and sends it back up to the tank. And because there's nothing between, well, in my case I'll have a UV sterilizer, but there's not a lot of equipment between the pump and the tank, you get the full force of that pump shooting the water back through the tank, minus the head pressure, which will be about, in this case, about 1 metre. And my 10,000 litre an hour pump can do 6 metres of head, so I should get, I don't know, about 8,000 litres an hour back through the pump. So that's what I'm going to do. I had this timber The lower sections, these sleepers, were part of a 6x2x2 sump that I had for my rainbow fish set up out the back of the tank. All the screws were rusted. I had a terrible time. I had jimmy bars and circular saws, and I had to cut it all up. What I've done here, I'm not going to show you because this box is not pretty. It's not the way you should do it, but sometimes in life you need to use. Actually, Marty, who used to work for me, said, Adam, if you've got the materials, use them. Use them now because they ain't going to sit around. And if you need some materials later on, you can go and get some later on, but use what you've got now. So I've done that. It's not pretty, but it's going to work. I've got some geotextile fabric, which I'll line to soften the edges and soften the bottom, and then I'll line it with the rubber butyl membrane pond liner that I had with the rainbow fish sump. I'll line that. I'll sit this to the end of the actual turtle tank, and that'll be my sump. Here's a visual update on the aquascaping and the sump placement of my 4,000 litre Australian turtle and rainbow fish tank. It's actually settling quite nicely. There's no fish in here yet, only the plethora of tadpoles that appeared from the frog spawn. The plants seem to be settling quite well in the, oh sorry about the reflection there, but in the far back corner you can see the Vallisneria starting to grow up there. In the center portion I've got the hair grass which is growing and probably needs a bit of a trim, and then down towards that end there, the more open end, you can see that I've got the ground cover plant. Not sure if it's a hydrocotyle or a marsilia. You can also see the casuarina root, which I twisty turny kind of root, which I put into the tank to provide that kind of riverbank feel and that log jam. And it's still not pretty, but this is the sump running, and yes, I have to tie it up and make it a bit decorative and put a capping board on there and a lid and have a better solution for the filter sock than that clamp, but it's working. One thing to note is that with my 10,000 litre an hour pump, just down there, that's just a J-Bal pump running through the ultraviolet sterilizer and then coming up into the tank via the spray bar. One thing I found out pretty promptly is that the one overflow bulkhead, and I really should have realised this, which is this guy just here, there was no way in the world this guy was going to be able to handle 10,000 litres an hour. And I actually had to, in the end, utilise the overflow bulkhead at the back, which is just down there, cut into it where it was going to go into the stormwater, and run that as an overflow into the sump, along with the 32mm or 1.25" bulkhead that I also drilled. And even still, you can tell by the little bit of a gurgling noise every now and then that it's only just handling that flow. I could turn the pump down. It's a DC pump. I could turn it down, but I don't want to reduce my flow through the aquarium by turning the pump down. So for now, I've got these two overflows running, and yes, they need tidying up a bit, but that's okay. I'll get that sorted. What I will do, however, is drill a hole through the top wall of the sump around about there, install a 50mm or a 2-inch bulkhead, which will be the final overflow drain, and I will plumb that down into the original drain that leads to the stormwater. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to the Australian Aquarius YouTube channel, and we'll do all sorts of things: fresh, salt and pond, DIY projects, collecting, exploring, renovating old fish ponds. See you next time.